The moment you saw your debt, you probably reacted the way most people do. You thought it was your fault. Something you signed, something you chose, something you now have to deal with. And that feels fair, right? You made decisions. Now you live with them. But what if that number sitting there isn't really about what you did? What if it's actually telling you something else entirely? What if it's showing you your position? Because that balance, it's not just a total. It's not just a reminder. It's not just a problem waiting to be solved. It's a signal, a quiet one. It tells you where you stand, inside a system that was already moving long before you ever touched it. And that's the part no one really explains to you, because everything about it feels personal. It feels like responsibility, like ownership, like consequences, like you made a series of choices, and now you're dealing with the result. But underneath that feeling, there's something much bigger. There's a structure, a system that shapes how you spend, how you think, how you decide, without ever introducing itself to you. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It just exists, and you slowly adjust to it. So when you look at your debt and think, I just need to get out of this, it sounds logical. It sounds responsible. But it might not be the right question, because this isn't just about getting out. It's about understanding what you're actually inside of. And once you start seeing that clearly, the way you look at money changes in a way that's hard to reverse. So if you want to understand how this really works, how money moves beneath the surface, why it feels like you're always slightly behind even when you're doing everything right, make sure you subscribe. Because once you see it clearly, you don't go back to seeing it the old way. And everything starts from a level that feels very familiar. You probably don't even need an explanation for it. A credit card you opened because it felt normal. A payment plan that made something expensive feel reasonable. Maybe a student loan you signed when you were younger, when the numbers didn't really feel real yet. Nothing extreme, nothing irresponsible, just what everyone else seemed to be doing. At first, it doesn't feel heavy at all. You make your payments. You stay on track. You tell yourself you're being disciplined. You're doing it the right way. And for a while, that belief feels solid. It feels true. Until one day, something small happens. Nothing dramatic. You open your account. Not because you're worried, just out of habit. Just a quick check, and the number is higher. Not by a huge amount. Not enough to panic, but enough to make you pause for a second longer than usual. You scroll back. You think about the last few days. You didn't spend more. You didn't miss anything. You didn't mess up. So why did it grow? And that's when something shifts, very slightly. A quiet discomfort. Not strong enough to scare you, but enough to stay in your mind. Because everything you've been told says this is normal. This is how it works. This is part of becoming financially stable. So you keep going. You adjust a little. Spend a bit less. Pay a bit more when you can. Try to manage it better. But somehow, it still feels like you're just a little behind. Like no matter how careful you are, the system is always just a step ahead of you. And this is the moment most people miss. Because on the surface, it looks like you're managing your debt. But you're not. Your debt is managing you. It's shaping what feels okay to buy, what feels risky, what feels possible, even how often you check your account or avoid checking it altogether. And the strange part is, it doesn't need to push you. It doesn't need to pressure you. It just needs to be there, quietly influencing you. And over time, without you noticing, your behavior starts to bend around it. Not in a big, obvious way, but in small, consistent ways. Until one day, you realize your life is built around it. And you never really questioned it, because it felt normal. But this is just the beginning. This is the first level. And things change faster than you expect. Level 1. Reactive debt, when you're always catching up. At this stage, nothing looks extreme from the outside. Your balances aren't massive. Your payments aren't overwhelming. It's just constant, small numbers. Recurring payments, interest that you don't fully calculate, because honestly, no one ever really showed you how it works in real life. You look at your statements, you see progress, or at least what looks like progress. You're paying something every month, so it must be going down, right? But then something strange starts to show up. You've been paying for months, maybe even years. And when you actually stop and look closely, the balance hasn't really moved. You scroll through your history, payment after payment, month after month, and somehow the number feels almost the same, maybe slightly lower, maybe slightly higher, but never meaningfully different. That's when it hits you. You're not reducing the debt. You're maintaining it. You're feeding it just enough to keep it alive. And suddenly, the feeling changes. It doesn't feel like progress anymore. It feels like maintenance, like you're running, but staying in the same place. And that's when the confusion starts to turn into something else. Because you realize you're not actually in control. You're reacting, adjusting, trying to keep up with something that never slows down, because it doesn't need to. You're the one doing the adjusting. You're the one moving around it. And after a while, a different thought starts to show up. Quiet at first, then louder. Maybe the problem isn't that you're not doing enough. Maybe the problem is you're playing too small. Maybe the way out isn't cutting back. Maybe it's going bigger. And that thought changes everything. Level 2, lifestyle debt. When your life starts to lock in. This is where things start to feel different. Not worse, just heavier. You take on bigger commitments. A mortgage, a car payment, something that feels like progress, something that looks like you're moving forward. And in many ways, you are. You have more stability, more structure, more of what people would call a real life. But something else happens at the same time. Your choices start to narrow, not all at once, not in a way you can clearly point to, but slowly, quietly. There's a moment where you think about leaving your job, maybe starting something of your own, maybe moving somewhere new, maybe just changing direction. And then the thought hits you. The payment. Next month, and the month after that, and the one after that, and suddenly, the decision feels different. You don't say no because you don't want to do it. You say no because you can't afford to get it wrong. So you stay. You tell yourself it's temporary, that you'll move later, that you just need more time. But deep down, you know something shifted. Because now, the debt isn't just something you owe. It's something that decides. It decides how much risk you can take, how long you can wait, what you can walk away from. And the scariest part is, it never tells you directly. It just removes your options, until the safe choice is the only one that still feels possible. And that's the moment everything changes. Because now, it's not just financial, it's behavioral. And once it reaches that point, you're no longer just living your life. You're navigating around your obligations. And this is where a small group of people make a very different decision. They stop trying to avoid debt, and instead, they start trying to use it. Level 3, leveraged risk when time starts costing you money. At first, it feels like a breakthrough. You're no longer just paying things off. You're building something. You borrow to start a business, to invest, to create something that could grow faster than your income ever could. And in the beginning, it feels powerful. You have access to more capital, more opportunity, more upside. You're not stuck anymore. You're moving. But then reality shows up. Quietly at first, then all at once. The numbers look good. Revenue is coming in. On paper, everything seems to be working. But your bank account doesn't feel that way. It feels tight. You're waiting on payments that haven't arrived yet. Bills are due before the money clears. You find yourself checking your accounts more often than you want to admit. Running numbers in your head when you're trying to relax. Lying awake at night, calculating timelines. Because now, time has a price. Every day that passes without cash flow costs you, not emotionally, financially, and that pressure doesn't turn off. It follows you, into your thoughts, into your sleep, into the way you look at every decision. And that's when you learn something that no textbook really prepares you for. Profit and cash flow are not the same thing. You can be winning on paper and still run out of money in real life. And debt forces you to understand that difference in the most direct way possible. It doesn't give you time to ignore it. It doesn't let you delay the lesson. It makes it immediate. It makes it real. But if you survive this phase, something shifts again. Level 4, structured debt when you start designing the system. At some point, the pressure starts to feel different. Not gone, but more controlled. Because you're no longer reacting. You're planning. You start to see patterns. You understand how payments can be moved, how timelines can be extended, how obligations can be aligned with growth instead of fighting against it. You restructure loans. Not because you're desperate, but because you're optimizing. You start thinking ahead. Weeks, months, years. You begin to connect things most people never connect. Tax strategy, cash flow timing, leverage. They're not separate anymore. They're part of the same system. And for the first time, it feels like you're not being pushed around. You're making decisions on purpose. You're designing outcomes instead of reacting to them. And strangely, debt starts to feel less like a burden and more like a tool. Something you can shape, something you can control. But then, something shifts again. Because at a higher level, the debt stops being yours entirely. Level 5. Strategic debt when position becomes power. This is where the perspective changes completely. You're no longer asking, can I afford this? That question disappears. Instead, you start asking something very different. Can this carry itself? You're not focused on repayment anymore. You're focused on placement, where the debt sits, who holds it, what it's attached to, because that position determines everything. You use debt to acquire assets, to take control of outcomes, to influence decisions that other people have to respond to. And at this level, something becomes very clear. Debt isn't just a number. It's leverage, in the purest sense of the word. Not pressure, power. The same thing that once limited your options now expands them. The same mechanism, just from the other side. And once you see it like that, you can't unsee it. But even this isn't the highest level. Because above this, there's something else entirely. Level 6. System. Level debt when you shape the rules. At this level, people don't just use debt. They influence the conditions under which it exists. They don't accept rates. They move them. They don't respond to risk. They define what risk means. Debt here isn't something you pick up. It's something you operate within. A system that stretches across institutions, across markets, across countries. It flows through decisions that most people never see. Quiet conversations, policy shifts, signals that move entire markets before anyone realizes what happened. And the people at this level, they don't think about debt the way you do. They don't think in terms of monthly payments or balances. They think in terms of access, control, timing, because they understand something that feels almost uncomfortable when you hear it for the first time. The cost of debt is never random. It's set, structured, positioned, and whoever has the ability to influence that shapes everything downstream. Entire industries, entire economies, entire lives. And once you really see that clearly, you start to look back to where you started. That first number, that first balance, and you realize something you didn't see before. You were never just dealing with debt. You were stepping into a system that was already designed, and now you can finally see it. And this is where something clicks in a way you can't unsee. You were never really trying to escape debt. You were just moving through it, from one position to another, from reacting to managing to structuring to deploying. But the system itself never disappeared. It just changed how it related to you. At the lower levels, debt controls your behavior. It decides what you can risk, what you can delay, what you can walk away from. It quietly narrows your world until your choices start to feel like obligations. But at higher levels, the direction reverses. Debt becomes something you use to shape outcomes, to control timing, to influence decisions that other people have to live with. The same mechanism, just from the other side. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Debt was never just a financial tool. It's a system of control. The only thing that changes is your position inside it. So the real shift isn't about having more or less debt. It's about understanding where you stand, while it's shaping everything around you. Which leads to a different question entirely, because the question was never how to get out of debt. The question is, what position are you actually playing in? So in the end, it was never about whether debt is good or bad. It was never about avoiding it completely, or chasing it blindly. The real question is simpler and harder at the same time. Where are you inside it? Because at one level, you're reacting to debt, adjusting your life around it, making decisions based on what it allows or restricts. At another level, you're operating it, structuring it, aligning it, using it with intention. And at the highest levels, you're controlling it, deciding how it moves, Who gets access? And under what conditions? Same system, different positions. And once you see that clearly, something inside you shifts. You stop asking how to escape, and you start asking how to move. Because debt was never just a financial burden. It's a layered system of power, and you were never just in debt. You were standing somewhere inside it. If this made you see money a little differently, take a second to like, subscribe, and comment your level below. I'll be reading through them, and I'll respond.